Welcome to Whole Numbers Part 1. Just before we get to the calculations, I just want to remind you of how you can convert to a fraction, because usually we use fractions when we calculate percentages. Okay, very easy. To write a percentage as a fraction, just put it over 100. All right, all those are percentages. So to write that number as a fraction, so 10% is 10 over 100. 25% is 25 over 100, 2.5% is 2.5 over 100, 12.5% is 12.5 over 100. So that's simple enough. Now, how do you write a decimal number as a fraction? Also, very simple. The part that's not a zero, you must take to the numerator. So the 1 goes to the numerator. The part of the number that's not a zero goes to the numerator. So here the 315 goes to your numerator. Here the 52 must go to your numerator. What about the denominator? For your denominator, you will either use 10 if the number is 2 digits, 100 if the number is 3 digits, 1000 if the number has 4 digits, and then of course 10,000 if the number has 5 digits, and so forth. All right, so if we look at these particular numbers, starting with this one, how many digits does this number have? 1, 2. So that means we're going to use 10 because 10 also has 2 digits. This one has 1, 2, 3. So we'll use 100 because 100 has also 1, 2, 3 digits. This number is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the denominator must also have 4 digits. So 1000 has 4 digits, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Finally, the last number has 5 digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So therefore, we need to use 10,000 in the denominator. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because 10,000 also has 5 digits. Okay, so that's basically how you would convert to a fraction. All right then, now let's go on to the calculations. All right, we are given a fruit basket, and the fruit basket contains 3 different fruits. We have 20 apples, we're given 20 bananas, 10 pears in the basket, and of course the total of all the fruits is 50. Okay, so let's answer these questions. You're asked to calculate a percentage. And I always tell my learners, if you have to calculate a percentage, then that means you are going to multiply by 100. Okay? To calculate a percentage, you have to multiply by 100. Okay? But what is it that you're multiplying by 100? Of course, here we want the percentage of apples. There are 20 apples out of a total of 50 fruits. So 20 over the total of the fruits, and of course multiply by 100 to calculate your percentage. Let's look at that. So 20 out of 50 fruits, and we of course want the percentage of that, so we multiply by 100 to get 40%. That is 40%. Move on to the next question. We want to increase, and now remember, to increase means to add to. All right, so we must add to. So we want to increase the 20 bananas by 20%. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to calculate 20% of the 20 bananas to see how much that 20% is worth. Okay, so 20%, remember from the previous section, to write it as a fraction, we just put it over 100. And of course, we're going to multiply this by the 20 bananas. Let's see what we get. If you take 20% and then you multiply it by 20, that should give you 4 bananas. Okay? And of course, remember, we were asked to increase the 20 bananas by 20%. Now that we know that 20%, we've calculated it there, 20% of 20 is 4. To increase means to add to. So we have 20 bananas. We want to increase that by 20%, which is 4 bananas. So we end up with 24 bananas. Okay, let's move on. The next one is very similar to the previous question, but here instead of increasing, we are decreasing. To decrease means to take away or to subtract. Take away or subtract. So we want to take away 60% of the 10 pairs, all right? So the first thing you would do is you would calculate 60%. We know 60% would be 60 over 100 multiplied by the 10 pairs. So 60% multiplied by the 10 pairs. It's already been calculated there, 6. All right, so the first thing you do is you calculate 60% of the 10 pairs, and that will give you 6 pairs. All right, now we were asked to decrease, so we need to take those 6 pairs away. So 10 pairs at the beginning, take away or subtract 6, you are left with 4 pairs. All right. Let's move on to the next question on percentages. Before 10 more bananas are added to the basket, the bananas now make up 40% of the new fruit basket. Calculate the total of the fruit basket. Now, this question is asking you to calculate the total. It's a very tricky question because now you have to go back and the inverse of multiplication is division. So whenever you get a question like this, that is giving you an item. In this case, the item would be the bananas and the percentage of that item. And the question is asking you to calculate the total. Look out for these questions. Here you must do the inverse. So let's start with the first part. 10 more bananas are added to the basket. Remember, we had 20 bananas at the beginning. And we are told that 10 more bananas are added. So let's add those 10. So we now have 30 bananas. Okay, so that's the first part. And now we're told that these bananas make up 40% of the new fruit basket. And we must use that information to calculate the total. And of course, the total we can get this way. We take the 30 bananas. And because we are working our way back to the total, we have to calculate the inverse. So then we would divide that by 40%. Remember, it's 40 over 100 to see how many fruits we have in this basket. Okay, so if we take 30 bananas and we know that they make up 40%, so we can divide by 40%. We'll find that we've got the total of 75 fruits. Okay, and of course, if I went too quickly, just pause the video or go back. Moving on to a percentage change. Remember, percentage change could either be a percentage increase if the prices are going up, like soap. For soap went from 20 rands to 25, so that is a percentage increase we need to calculate there. And for cell phones, as you can see, the cell phone price went down from 1,000 to 700. So that would represent a percentage decrease. All right, so how would you calculate a percentage change? Whether it's an increase or decrease, you have to use this formula. All right, and the formula is you take the new price minus the old price over the old price and you multiply by 100. Remember what we said before? If you are calculating a percentage, you are always going to multiply by 100. It's the same over here, but now to calculate the percentage increase of soap, okay, the formula tells you to take the new price. The new price is 25 rands, so you're going to take the 25 minus the old price, and the old price was 20, and then you put that over the old price, of course 20, and you multiply all of that by 100. If you go to your calculator to work that out, it will be 25 minus 20 over 20 multiplied by 100, which of course will give you 25%. Okay, so that is 25%. Remember, you were calculating a percentage. And if it was a percentage decrease, you would do it the same way. Just look at cell phones. You look at those prices on top there. What is the new price of cell phone? 700. So that's new. Minus old. Old is 1,000. Over old again, which is again 1,000. And you multiply that by 100. And of course, you will get negative 30%. This has already been calculated for you. That negative tells you that there was a percentage decrease. So the price of cell phone went down, so there was a percentage decrease. That's why you've got negative over there. So move on to simple interest. Okay, for simple interest, if you have to calculate interest, then you need to use pen. The P, of course, is for the present amount, the amount now. The I is for the interest rate. And the N is for the number of years. So that I is for the interest rate. And that N is for the number of years. And of course, if the question is asking you to calculate the amount that is in the bank, the total amount, then you would use this formula. The amount in the account at the end of the period, you would use A for amount. And of course, P is still for present amount. And the I is the interest rate as indicated before, and the N is the number of years. So let's put this to application. All right, Osilo invests 4,000 at simple interest for 3 years. And of course, we need to calculate the interest. This is the interest formula, PIN. Okay, so to calculate the interest, we need P, which is the present amount. The amount now is 4,000. Multiplied by I. I is the interest rate, which is 5%. And remember from the start of the video, how do you write a percentage as a fraction? You put it over 100. So to write 5% as a fraction, we put it over 100. And the N is for the number of years. And in this case, there are 3 years. And of course, if you go to your calculator to check that out, 4,000 multiplied by 5%, which is 5 over 100, multiplied by 3, which gives you 600. So the interest will be 600. All right, so the follow-up question is asking you to then calculate how much is in the account. So we know that Silo is going to receive 600 for 3 years. So he had 4,000 before, and he receives 600. So therefore, after 3 years, he will have 4,600. Or alternatively, we could have used the formula to calculate the total amount in the account after 3 years. Remember, this formula is when we want to calculate the total amount, including interest, okay? So, of course, he started off with 4,000. All right, that's the one there. And, of course, the interest rate we know was 5%. So, that's 5 over 100. And the number of years is 3 years. So if you calculate that out using your calculator, you have 4,000, 1 plus 5%. I'm just plugging whatever's given in the formula. And what do you notice? Notice the formula gives you 4,600 as well. So this is very important to learn for everyone. And just remember, these formulae will be given to you in the test. So you don't actually have to memorize them, but you should be able to use them. Okay, let's move on to the next section. Ratios. Okay, so a ratio is very simple. A ratio tells you how many times a number contains another number. Okay, so If we wanted to look at this ratio, so one number contains another number how many times? And it's easy to understand that if we simplify the ratio number. So if we look at 25 is to 40, how could we simplify the ratio? Easy. We look at a number that goes into both. And in this case, 5 can go into both numbers, right? 5 goes into 25 and 5 goes into 40. 5 goes into 5 how many times? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So 5 goes into 25 5 times. And of course, 5 goes into 40 8 times. So the simplest way to write that ratio is we would write it as 5 is to 8, okay? Divide both sides by 5 because 5 is a factor that can go into both 25 and 40. So that is how we can write that ratio in its simplest form, okay? All right, so for the next question, we're still simplifying a ratio, but now we must simplify this ratio to a unit. And we all know that unit means 1, okay? So we want the smallest side to be 1. Okay, and how can we get a unit ratio? To get a unit ratio, we need to divide both sides by the smaller of the two numbers. So 25 is obviously smaller than 40. So we would then divide both sides by 25. And then, of course, 25 divided by 25 is 1. 40 divided by 25. You could use your calculator to check that. 40 divided by 25 will give you a ratio of 1.6. Okay, so this will be 1.6. And that is your solution. Let's move on. How do we then divide the ratios? Very easy. To divide the ratio, you need to check the number of parts, okay? So if we look at 2 is to 3, 2 parts there and 3 parts there. What's the total number of the parts? 5 parts. So then we can write it as a fraction because we know that 2 parts plus 3 parts will give us 5 parts. And okay, so if you want to divide this ratio, looking at A, you are looking at the 2. So 2 out of the 5 parts, and then we multiply this by 600. All right, and then for 3, let's call it B. So 3 out of the 5 parts, and again multiply by 600. So if we had 2 people, and this was person A, was going to get 2 of that 600 rands, and person B was going to get 3 of that 600 rands, how much would each one get? So person A would get 2 out of the 5 parts, and person B would get 3 out of the 5 parts of the 600 rands. And then if you want to check the amount that each one would get, and of course we would just multiply that, starting with person A. So person A gets 2 out of the 5 parts, and we multiply that by 600. So getting 2/5 of 600, it means you will get 240. Okay, and if person B is getting 3 out of 5, then you can just change that part there to 3. Person B will get 3 parts out of the 5 parts, so he will get 360. And of course, if you're adding the 240 and the 360, it will give you the 600, which means a ratio is the way we can use to divide a number, to break down a number into different parts. And of course, here's another example already been done for you. Now 60 rands is being divided according to that ratio. So here we've got 2 parts, 3 parts, and 5 parts. And let's again say we were breaking down the 60 rands using the ratio into 3 parts. So one person, let's call this again A, would get 2, B would get 3, C would get 5. And of course, the total of all those parts is 10. So we have 10 parts. So A would get 2 out of the 10 parts. Multiply that by 60, it will give you 12. Then person B would get 3, again out of the 10 parts, and you multiply that by 60, it will give you 18. Person C would get 5 out of the 10 parts, and we multiply that by 60, it'll give you 30. Okay, let's move on to the next section. Speed, distance, and time. Okay, speed, distance, and time is easy. We say you always shade the one that you don't want, you're looking for. So, of course, if they're asking you for distance, they should give you speed and time. They're asking you for speed, they will give you distance and time. If they're asking you for time, they will give you distance and speed. So let's look at D1. D1, time has been given and speed has been given, and you'll have to calculate distance. All right, so what do? Shade distance, because that's the one that you're looking for. When you use your DST triangle, just shade distance because it's the one you're looking for, and you'll find that your distance is speed multiplied by time. Okay, speed is 50, time is 3, and of course 50 times 3 is 150 kilometers. That's how you work out your distance. And of course those hours would cancel out, so your distance will be in kilometers. Let's go on to the next one. So for D2, you're given distance, it's 300, you're also given time. So if you're given distance and time, the question is now asking you to calculate speed. And again, how would you calculate speed? You would shade it because that's the one that you're looking for. And you'll find that speed is distance over time. Distance over time. If you use your DST triangle, your speed is distance over time, and of course your distance is 300. Got it there? And your time is 50 seconds. Okay, so 300 divided by 50 will give you 6 meters over the second. So meters per second is how you would indicate your speed. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And then finally, for D3, you are asked to calculate time. Okay, you're asked to calculate time. Still using the same triangle. Remember, if you're looking for time, that's what you're going to have to shade. If you're looking for time, let's shade away T, because that's the one that we're looking for. And what's time? Time is therefore distance over speed. Okay, distance over speed. So the distance has been given as 250, and the speed is 50 kilometers per hour. All right, so distance is 250, speed is 50. 250 divided by 50 will give you 5. And of course, kilometers will cancel out and you're left with hours. So, sorry, that would be 5 hours. All right, so the next section is only for grade 9s. Thank you to the grade 7 and 8. Please subscribe and like this video. We'll see you next time. For grade 9s, all right, in addition to simple interest, you are also expected to calculate compound interest. All right, so what compound interest tells you is that the interest must be calculated every year. For simple interest, the interest stays the same. In the previous example, we looked at Silo, who was receiving interest for 3 years, and of course, Silo received 600. So that means that he received 200, 200, 200. So for simple interest, the interest does not change. But for compound interest, interest must be calculated yearly on whatever is there at the end of the year. So the interest for the next year will be calculated every year, depending on what is there at the end of the year. and we do it for all the years that way. And of course, this is the formula that we would use to calculate compound interest. A, the amount, is equal to the present amount. And the only difference now is that the number of years, the n, is outside the bracket and it is an exponent. Okay, so just look out for the n when you are working out compound interest. So let's just plug it into the formula quickly. All right, so again, Silo invests 5,000 at 5% this time, and he will be investing for 5 years. So let's plug all of that into the formula. How much, what is the amount? The A, of course, is for the amount. Calculate the amount in the account after 5 years. All right, so P is the present amount. The amount now is 5,000. Okay, and of course, there's a 1 there in the formula. And I is for the interest rate. And of course, remember, how do you write 5% as a fraction? You'll put it over 100 and multiply it by the number of years. And of course, in this case, we've got 5 years. And if we work that out using our calculator, 5,000, open brackets, 1 plus 5%. And of course, close your bracket and to the power of 5. So that means Sila will now have 6,381. And of course, this is money, so we'll round it off to 2 decimal places and 41 cents. Okay, remember that money must always be rounded off to 2 decimal places. Okay. All right, so that's how you would calculate compound interest. And of course, that formula for compound interest will also be given to you in the exam. So you do not have to memorize it. You just have to be able to use it. And if there was a follow-up question which would have asked you how much interest has Silo received, and then of course you would say Silo had 5,000, but now he's getting 6,289. So if you want to calculate the interest, if in the exam they asked you to calculate the interest, you would take however much he has at the end of the 5 years, and you minus what he had at the beginning, which was 5,000. So which means he received, if you minus the 5,000, he received 1,381 and 41 cents interest. Okay, so you take whatever is there, the amount at the end of the 5 years, and you subtract the amount that was there at the beginning. So that means the extra amount, that is your interest. The extra amount that he received over and above the 5,000 is your interest. Okay, let's move on to the last section. Okay, we're going to get to this in detail when we do our graphs, but suffice for now is to just understand what direct and inverse proportional means. Direct proportional means that when the x variable increases, the y variable will also increase. So let me just show you. So let us say, for example, x is 1 and y is also 1. So what happens if x is 2? Then that means y will also become 2. So you see what happens? Because the graph is upward sloping, it's going up. That represents direct proportional, which means that as one variable, as the x variable goes up, the y variable also goes up. If the x variable goes up to 2, the y variable also goes up to 2. I mean, it's not always 1 and 2, but it's a simplified way to understand it. So direct proportional means that if one variable increases, the other variable will also increase. And we know that this is direct because the graph is going up. The graph is going up, it's increasing. All right, so if the graph is increasing, then that means you have direct proportional. Inverse proportional is just the opposite of that. Let's go to that example again. Let's say that x is 1, right, and y is 2. What happens if x increases to 2? Then y will decrease. So you see, inverse means opposite. So if 1 goes up, if the x variable increases, the y variable will decrease. Sorry, that should be 1, not 2. So as the x variable increases, the y variable will decrease. So that's inverse proportional. Okay, just get that right over there. Okay, so if x increases to 2, then y decreases to 1. Okay, so you can see when one goes up, the other one goes down. And of course, we could also see this by the graph. So this graph is going down, downward sloping, which indicates inverse proportional. So direct means the graph is increasing, one variable increases, the other increases too. Inverse means that the graph is going down. Okay, the graph is decreasing, so that when one variable is increasing, the other one is decreasing. Okay, this is